Each month, restaurant hospitality will put the spotlight on rising stars, up-and-coming independent restaurant leaders that represent a next generation. We'll speak with these operators and chefs about the future of independent restaurants, menu and culinary innovations, operational adaptations, lessons learned, and more. And is sponsored by Smithfield Culinary. This episode of Rising Stars features Geri Guidote Hernandez, co-founder of the Chicago empanada concept, Savory Crust. Hernandez's company has capitalized on the takeout and delivery-friendly aspects of empanadas, and she has added virtual brands to expand her reach. She also created a contact-free system for guests to easily buy a hero a lunch for hospital workers through the pandemic. And now, she is positioning the brand to move into airports. We think Geri Hernandez's star is rising. Listen to her story.
Today I have Geri Guidote Hernandez in Chicago, who is the owner and CEO of Savory Crust. It's an empanada concept and more, with some exciting things to talk about for this year. So I'm going to go straight to you, Geri, and tell us a little bit about how this concept got started, because it really has an interesting birth story.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I'm grateful for being on this segment. Savory Crust has a very unusual story behind it. It was born out of a chemotherapy room at St. Francis here in Evanston. And it was during a really unexpected time. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2015, had a mastectomy. After the mastectomy, went through chemotherapy. And during the chemotherapy sessions, my sister, who's a nurse, she would sit with me and pass time by talking about food. And she said, why don't we just start an empanada company? And I said, okay, sounds like a good idea. Sounds like a great idea considering where we were sitting at the moment. And if anyone's been in a chemotherapy room, it's a very depressing place with daytime TV blaring, fluorescent lights, chemicals, and you had to stay positive during that moment. So talking about food got us to taking our thoughts off what was actually happening. And it kept us laughing and, being creative. And that's how the concept was born.
But you did have a little experience as a business operator too. You'd started a cookie company and that had ended up in Whole Foods, right? So it wasn't totally new to you.
2004. So the food business has been very near and dear to me because as a child, we're always experimenting with different flavors and just baking as a child. And then it moved into granola and cookies. And finally, we were at a point in my life that, talking about empanadas was to bring joy, and to save her life, because mine was being questioned at the time.
And this was also part of your culture too, right? You said, we think of empanadas as being, Latin American, but it's also part of Filipino culture. Is that right? So,
correct.
Yeah.
So empanadas means empar, to fold in dough. Colombians have it, Argentinians have it, Filipinos have it. So everyone has their form of a dumpling. And it's, very portable. People that work and don't have time to eat, but want something that's of substance can bring an empanada. So it has your protein, your vegetables, your carbs, all wrapped into one.
And so 2 years later, then cancer-free, right? You launched Savory Crust in Chicago. And so tell us a little bit how you got started. You were just about to tell me you had some training, you had some background too, to prepare you for what was to come.
Not enough.
Yeah.
But it did. So as soon as, during chemotherapy, we were able to work through our menus. We were able to work through our flavor profiles and even look for space while I was in between chemo sessions recovering. but I was also working full time, doing some recruitment work for another organization. So when we had opened our doors, it was, you know, a doorway to a lot of lessons. It was a lesson in operations. It was more lessons in staffing. We opened in the middle of winter, probably not the best time to open a restaurant, but lucky for us, our community was awesome. The lines were out the door, family, friends, near and far came to join in our grand opening. So it was January of 2017 in which we were serving our first empanadas. And in 3 days, well, that day we had run out. So we had to work another 24 hours to make more. And then the second day we sold out, and the third day, and finally we had to close on the fourth or fifth day, I can't recall. But we had to close for a few days because we couldn't keep up.
It's a good problem to have, I suppose.
Not everyone has those problems,
yeah.
But you know, just different problems.
Yeah. So now tell us about how it progressed from there. So then later on, you brought in a new virtual concept. Can you explain a little bit about what the thinking was there, and then decided to go all takeout?
So we had taken a concept that I thought would do well, only because, you know, we come from a large Filipino community here in Chicago. And there were dishes that were a little bit more complex, and they were rich in flavor, and they were only held dear during special occasions like Christmas and Easter. So the name Mahal Kita comes from our language, and the meaning of Mahal Kita means I love you. And it was a love for our families, a love for our friends, and a love for our food. So some of the dishes that we were able to create, kare kare, which is a peanut stewed oxtail, then sinigang, which is a sour soup. And then we also had like a bistec or adobos. We were able to package it in a adult Lunchable. And so you actually had these dishes that were meant for the table, could be portable and eaten in the car. Now, hindsight, we didn't, you know, we had no idea what was coming, you know, with the pandemic.
This was all pre-pandemic, yeah.
It was all pre-pandemic. So when we had launched Mahal Kita, we had also realized that the industry was moving more towards takeout and delivery, and to maximize our space, because our space was only 1,200 square feet, and to maximize what we were doing, we took out our 14 seats, we converted to takeout and delivery only, and that allowed us three things. It allowed us to have two self-serve kiosks, in which it would improve the customer satisfaction in getting their food quicker. It also allowed us to bring in additional refrigeration, to bring in more raw material, to expand into more concepts. And then, you know, by doing that, we did that in October of 2019.
Good timing.
When the pandemic hit, we had already secured, you know, most of our takeout. We had worked through all our flaws, most of our flaws, I would say, with boxing up meals and having them to go. So we were ironically prepared.
You're saying ironically, but ironically, because you had no idea that this was coming. What was the shutdown would come the next year, but you were ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah, we were ready for that. So when we created our packaging for an adult Lunchable, that created space for when the pandemic did hit. It allowed us to reach into the community and let them know that they were able to buy a meal kit, which is an adult Lunchable for first responders.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were, what we did was we put a buy a hero lunch and people were able to not leave their home. They were able to press a button on our website, purchase a lunch. We organized our staff to acknowledge that that ticket meant that we were going to deliver that food for them. And we partnered with meal trains. We partnered with Give in Kind. We, you know, it was an aggregate of all the customers that were purchasing meals. And every 50 or every 100, we would pick a hospital and deliver that food for them because they couldn't leave either.
Right.
And they were working around the clock. They couldn't cook. They couldn't go to the grocery stores. So we ended up feeding about 20 hospitals.
Oh, that's fantastic.
In and around Chicago.
Yeah. And this was probably even before others were starting to do this, right? So you were ready and able to jump in on this before the trend became more popular. It became a lot more competitive.
Correct.
Later on, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, when everyone started buying the to-go packages, it started getting harder and harder to, you know, procure some of the to-go boxes.
Right.
So that was another challenge where we were looking online, we were paying higher prices, almost double of when we started.
Yeah.
So that was a little challenging.
Now, when did you open the second location, which was really more about production, right? The second.
Correct.
So tell us about that.
So making empanadas takes another learning lesson. Taking empanadas and trying to scale them up takes a little bit more space than a 1,200 square foot restaurant.
Right.
And that 1,200 square foot space was a former yogurt shop, which we had converted. So that means you had to put in a hood. We had to put in the floor drains, you know, I mean, so we had gutted it out and invested, you know, $80,000 at the moment, $80,000 at the moment. And it, you know, grew into about 300,000.
Oh, wow.
So we needed to expand production. So what we did was, and it just, ironically, again, I think it was just maybe synchronicity where I was talking to our attorney about something completely different. And I just said, by the way, do you have a space? And this is what we were looking for. I didn't want to have to buy another hood. I didn't want to have to put in floor drains. And he had put me in contact with his broker for their firm. And 24 hours later, they find this beautiful space that was a former catering space.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
in Carroll Stream. And the front walk-in area, we converted into a small takeout.
Oh, so you can actually pick up there too. That's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And so now, when did the wings concept come along?
So just about a month ago, we rolled out Wingology, which is a wings concept. And wings aren't anything new. It's just like pizza or tacos. But we had been making wings for ourselves in the back of the house.
Yeah.
And they're probably the best wings I've ever had. And every time Chef Juan says, you know, he would make the wings. I'm like, we need to sell these. But we never had the space because the refrigeration was already being taken up by mostly the empanadas. When we moved, I said, when and if we get a bigger space, we will expand into wings. And so when we moved into Carroll Stream, which is, it's about another 2,000 square feet of just pure kitchen space.
Yeah.
And we were able to roll out the wings.
So now you have two virtual brands going, right?
Correct.
Yeah. In addition to the empanadas.
Correct. So when the pandemic hit, we actually had to shut down our tablets for Mahal Kita because we were so busy.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's something that we want to revisit. So that's in the works too.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about 2021. So you've got some plans for this year.
So 2021, as restaurants open up, you know, we've always had, you know, our eye on expanding our concept into either concessions or the airports. We are a woman minority certified business. We are also ACDBE, which is Airport Concessions Disadvantage certified. So we've been certified for about 3 years. So I think shortly after we had, already gone for our certification. So 2021 is to kind of pick up where we left off. I mean, we were in dialogue with many other organizations to expand the concept into the airports. We were in dialogue with, expanding into the stadium because they're such a portable product, and it's delicious. I mean, you can't, it's as comparable to a, hot dog or a pizza or a taco. And empanadas are, like I said, they remind me of home.
Seems like it would be perfect for something in an airport. And I know you've been working with Compass. You've done some pop-ups with them in the past.
Correct.
Yeah.
So about, I think 2017, 2018, we were doing some pop-ups with them with their corporate dining program.
So this year, hopefully that will be something that you'll move into then to work out, to be in some airports.
This year, yeah, it's always going out there and looking for new ways to deliver your empanadas. I mean, it can go into, and it sounded crazy in the beginning with self-serve kiosks, baked empanadas in a hot locker, and people that are traveling can order them from their phone right when they get off and pick it up at the hot box.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Seemed like not feasible in the past, but it seems more of a reality these days.
Well, now that things are opening up in Chicago, even though you're not as concerned about indoor dining because you're set for, for the to-go and to delivery trend, which everyone seems to feel is with us now permanently. We've trained customers to order this way. What's your mood? What's your thinking about going forward?
We've always, been so focused on our product that what the past year has brought has made us look up and look at what are the laws, what are the, functions of government that are there to help small businesses. It became more apparent. It made us look into, the bills and what was being signed and what would that mean to small businesses.
Right.
Because these loans that weren't there before, if they were micro loans up to $50,000, that's 1 month's payroll. How is that supposed to sustain us as a industry when half of it's already gone, right? Half the industry, some restaurants have closed, and there aren't enough funding vehicles out there, at least because we're so busy. I don't know if I need more time to search. But if we're talking about 2/3 of our global workforce is in the restaurant business and the funding isn't there, but you can almost bet it's self-funded. So if more resources were available, yeah, I think that's a more positive outlook of longevity and sustaining the industry.
Make sure to check out our next Rising Star, debuting on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. And if you know someone who is a rising star, let us know at lisa.jennings, JENNINGS @informa.com.